Okay, we're back after a couple of minutes of technical difficulties. This is Tori and Sam, and they're here to talk about The Light Princess, musical that debuted in the UK. And the album, the original cast recording, is out now. So we're live on Facebook, and we're going to be taking questions from people watching. And I first want to ask you guys about how you met and how this collaboration between the two of you on The Light Princess happened.
We were put together by the National Theatre. I was doing some work there, I had a play on, or a play in development, and Tori came to the National with the idea of making a musical of The Light Princess, the George MacDonald story. And somebody at the National thought that maybe we might get on, so we met, and
got on like a house on fire.
We got on like a house on fire, had some meetings, and that was that.
So Tori, the idea of adapting this particular story for a musical was yours.
I brought it to the National.
What was it about this story?
Well, I was fascinated by the idea that you could have a fairy tale, and if we worked on it together with a great book writer, lyricist, that we could make it resonate with teenagers today. It was written in the 19th century, and I felt that the original story had so much magic, and we talked about the idea for floating and then finding gravity in water, or almost gravity. That was a great metaphorical tale, but we wanted to find out why a girl would be floating, and we couldn't accept that it was a curse. Handing over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the sort of tradition of fairy tales, they're told and retold, and they change according to the time and place. And there's something really beautiful about the original story. It's a gorgeously simple idea that this girl floats because she doesn't engage with the world. And it's only when she finally falls in love and then loses love, and it's especially the losing of love, that finally she cries for the first time in her life, and the weight of her tears bring her down. And there's something about the simplicity of that idea in the original George MacDonald that was very appealing to us and very magical. And then we just wanted to take it further, and if you look at the story metaphorically, then we began to ask questions about what the metaphor might mean in a contemporary world. So it was the jumping off point for us, but we've retained that kind of central idea. But you know, we made it our own, and that was something we wanted to do right from the beginning, wasn't it?
There are a couple of questions here about your influences, both from the world of fairy tales and from the world of musical theater. Can you each talk a little bit about one or two examples in each of those areas that you have loved at some point in your life?
Well, from the score side of things, we were talking in depth about this not being a pop rock musical as far as the sound, the instrumentation. And although there are elements of percussion and things like that, we talked about having, I did something called Midwinter Graces and the Night of Hunters. Night of Hunters was a variation on classical themes. And we used, in the orchestration, we used woodwinds, we used strings, with the piano, of course, being the center. And you had talked to me about, and Martin had talked to me about loving the sound of that sonic template.
Those albums were, I suppose they were happening as we were writing, weren't they?
They were happening at the same time, influencing it. And we had listened to a lot of Sondheim, a little night music being one of the things we listened to, Miller's Son.
Yes, Miller's Son was an important song for you, wasn't it? Yeah.
For No H2O.
Yeah.
It really helped me see the possibility that influenced the song No H2O.
I love fairy tales, I always have. I think I'm fascinated by the way, as I said before, they're told and retold. All the Tales of 1001 Nights and all the Brothers Grimm tales have always fascinated me. So I was always interested in the idea of the kind of musical fairy tale. And one thing we decided on fairly early on was to not send the genre up. So we were interested in being contemporary, and with some of the themes being violently contemporary, but at the same time we we learned that the best way to tell the story was to begin with the words "once upon a time." We don't end with "happily ever after" because it's more complex than that. But we certainly appreciated the way archetypes can be explored and expanded and interrogated. So the form's important. And as Tori said, I mean, it's sometimes always an influence. I suppose I've loved musicals since I was a kid, but there's something about Tori as a composer and the way her work is investigative and expansive and very bold musically, almost operatic at times. I just thought this was too exciting a project to pass on, and I just felt really, really excited by the idea of working with Tori and seeing what she could produce in story terms, but particularly musically on stage. And I think it was a sort of happy kind of marriage of events that she was actually exploring some ambitious things musically with those other two albums as well.
Sam was really holding my feet to the fire in every way. But about fairy tales, do you remember you were reading the old fairy tales and saying, these are much darker than a lot of their current editions that come out. And we went back to some of the originals and talked to them what you were telling me at the time. You would say, they were here for a reason. They were here to warn you. They were here to teach you something. And those sisters in Cinderella, I mean, they had bloody heels.
Exactly. The brutality of something like that, and the stepmother figure in that tale actually chops the toes off her daughter's feet in order that they fit into the slipper so that they can marry the prince. That these are worlds where parents behave badly, where parents make the wrong decisions for their children, where children have to face the darkness of the world and really grow up very, very quickly. So, all of those fairy tales are about those things, and sometimes we think of them as something kind of light and fluffy, but in fact they really take you to dark places. So we were interested in that.
Well, I noticed that you mentioned earlier, Tori, that you wanted this to be something that teenagers could relate to. I know you have a teenager yourself. Did that have any influence in your decision to do this project now?
Yes, all the time. She has been driving it from right here, and sometimes right here, and making sure that we didn't dilute the experience of what would you say, from 10 years old on up of a demographic. Now, we might be for a precocious 7-year-old. I would say Tash was open to the dark fairy tales then. But as she got to be about 10, and as kids do get into that adolescent age, then they start thinking in a different way. And we were talking about making sure we didn't betray the teenage experience, and that's why we wanted to deal with certain themes, particularly the coming of age story, and that we didn't dilute it. And you can talk about how you made sure that we weren't going to water the story down so that we betrayed our teenage audience.
It's fundamentally a piece about growing up and working out who you are. And when you're growing up and you're finding your place in the world, you meet a lot of challenges. And so there's a kind of, at a metaphorical level, there's a song, a sequence really. It's quite a long sequence where Althea, the central character, leaves the safety of her home, is forced out in a way, runs away in a very kind of teenage way, and then journeys through the metaphorical woods. And in those woods, she faces things that she wasn't expecting, and faces very challenging things that she needs to get her head and her might and her spirit around. So tales about growing up really need to go there. And it was great working at the National because they wanted that kind of story. Tori couldn't tell a story that didn't face these issues. I couldn't, and that's what we did. And the kind of the fairy tale structure helped us in a way, because you can actually do something as literal as go, Althea meets a dragon in the woods. But the fact that she defeats it means something. She defeats the dragon for very particular reasons. She's prepared because she's been stuck in the tower, and she loses her mother when she's 6, and her father locks her in the tower with her friend, and in the tower she has her mother's books. She has a huge library of books. And so she reads and reads and reads, and Piper, her friend, reads and reads and reads to her, and she doesn't know it, but actually in absorbing all that information, it helps her when she faces something that is a direct human experience.
Well, I think it's important to note that for all of the teenage experience that's being explored, this is not a children's theater piece. I think that the words sophisticated, ambitious, operatic all fit in, and certainly it's something that can be appreciated by a very advanced theatrical audience, as well as the teenagers and perhaps the sophisticated younger children for whom it's performed.
There's always, like we said, there's always that 7-year-old that would be in the theater and glued and listening and with us, and didn't have to know exactly what was going on in that naughty little lake during their romantic moments together when they were alone, our prince and princess, but they were with us. However, we are dealing with issues that we refuse to back away from, and you can talk more about it as far as the plot goes, but we decided that we didn't want to shy away from it, because our teenagers are becoming adults. They're becoming responsible, and they're having to ask some really tough questions of what they believe in, who they want to become, and are they capable of challenging the authority of their countries and their fathers who happen to be kings. We're in a world that's at war. It's at war. So it's nasty business. I mean, we have genocide in our story.
Yes, and I think that we were very keen that we looked at relationship with parents, and that we really made sure that we were showing that parents can often make the wrong decisions. So both kings in both kingdoms, the father of the prince and the father of the princess, at different times treat their children very badly, or make decisions that are wrong for their children, that they think are right for their children, or that are right for their kingdom. But it causes all kinds of problems, and it's very, very destructive. And we just wanted to show a story where it was clear that parents are human too, and that parents can do the wrong thing. And so for one king in particular, for one father, Althea's father, King Darius, we then wanted to show the way her experience and her challenges to patriarchy, to him, to the kingdom, to his expectations of her, the ways in which her challenges arrested him and made him look at his own life and look at his own choices and his own decisions. And so he goes on a journey too, where he finally understands what it is that he's done, and that it's the wrong thing.
So the album is out now, so people all over the world, everyone who's been hungry to get a taste of the Light Princess can now get one.
Yes.
Talk about the composition specifically and the sound of this record that's now available.
Well, we wanted to create sonic theater, and that was our challenge, because all the magic of Marianne Elliott's stage production, that's from the stage. So we had to make it come alive in your headphones or through your speakers. And that way we really had to approach it in a different way. Sam was rewriting so that it would fit an album format. He brought the dialogue down considerably because we wanted things to move. And we knew that we didn't have the, the visuals there. We have a wonderful package so you can read the lyrics and look at photographs for each song. But we knew that we had to keep your attention sonically. And so we decided to create the kingdoms in your headphones.
The show's nearly through song, even on stage. Most of the storytelling is taken via lyric and music. So in some ways that was brilliant, but we had to approach it in quite an ambitious way. I mean, Tori sort of referenced concept albums from the 70s, just in terms of what they did. They told big, expansive stories over 2 discs, and in a way, that level of ambition is the thing that we applied to the making of this album. But you saw our reaction when you asked us about the album. It was an exciting thing to do, and it's wonderful to have it out. And you know, it's a different experience from seeing it on stage, but hopefully it's a good oral experience.
And we had the opportunity because we started working on it a year ago, September of last year. We had other commitments. I did an album. He's done more than one play, staged them, and I did a world tour. So we began to make the album last September, really. And we had this wonderful opportunity because most cast albums are done in a day or two as far as recording. Universal said to us, go make the record that you want to make and make it a proper record. So therefore we worked with the actors and wanted to get those performances that we believe we have on the cast recording.
Is there a specific moment in the show, a lyric or a piece of music that you feel you personally relate to more than others?
Well, for me, it's Darkest Hour.
It changes daily. It's sort of the complete opposite. That almost is in response to what Tori said, better than good. In a way, they're the two kind of polar opposites of Althea's experience and feeling. One is her darkest hour, and the other, in her way, is her lightest hour, when all this joy as a result of finally meeting somebody who understands her and appreciates her just comes darting out of her soul. So today it's better than good, but tomorrow probably something else.
So this is a question that was submitted via Twitter. When you fall in love, is it light or heavy?
It's both. We explored that, don't we, Sam?
We do. It's both, and that really is the point of the story. And in a way, what Althea does is she retreats from the world, doesn't she? So her mother dies, and everybody in her kingdom reacts to that with grief, and some of them react with crocodile grief, which she sees through as a young girl. And she decides that the only way she can deal with it is to retreat to the air. And for 10 years she lives up in the air in a kind of fantasy existence where everything is wonderful, where her mother's still alive and where her father loves her and where her brother's kind to her. And the reality on the ground, which other characters see, is very, very different. And love is both things. Love is both lightness and darkness. And you can't have one without the other, and that's her journey, and I think that's the experience for all of us when we fall in love. There's a lot of mess.
Sam made it so that the prince has gravity when his mother dies. How he responds to the death of his mother, the grief, is with sadness. So his laughter follows his mother to heaven. And when her mother dies, her feet, she tries to follow her mother, and she floats. So she has levity, too much, and he has gravity, too much. And that was his poetry for the piece. That was to me, the keys for me to get into the music at all times.
I think that's beautifully said. We have some more questions coming in via Facebook and Twitter. One person wants to know specifically, well, she says she'd like to train to play Althea someday and wants to know physically, what did Rosie have to take on to achieve all she did acrobatically as part of the stage production?
It was training for a year and a half, probably.
Longer, I think. Yeah, 2 years.
And every part of her being was focused on this. To be able to you have to have really strong abdominal muscles, and you have to work on your core. Your core has to be completely capable of supporting itself with no gravity in the air. And most singers, if you watch them, you know, they're very much planted in a way, whether you're playing the piano and singing, whether you're standing and singing, or whether you're dancing, moving. You have to be able to use that diaphragm at all times. So she had to know how to get that air and support herself in the air, having no support at all. So the training was just unbelievable and very difficult to achieve. Not everybody we began to see, even in the workshops, didn't we, people wanting to investigate being out there. It was difficult. The physicality was really difficult.
Sometimes she was on the wire, and sometimes she was being held up by these amazing acrobats. The idea was that often she'd float on people's legs. This amazing acrobat called Emma would lie on the ground, her legs in the air, and Rosie would have to balance herself on the soles of Emma's feet. So it was incredibly physical, and then, as Tori says, singing at the same time. Often Rosie was singing as she was upside down. It was an incredible performance.
We almost made her do it in the studio like that, but decided it wasn't really fair.
She still managed to give the most gloriously full vocal performance every
night. Yeah.
Well, the one question that's coming in the most, probably twice as much as any other question, is what's the future for the Light Princess? Someone wants to know, what about a film version? Someone wants to know, will it be coming stateside? What can you guys tell us? I'm sure there's some elements that are top secret, but give us a little bit of what the future is.
Well, I'll tell you guys this. The more that you ask those questions, the more and the sooner we can get an answer, because it's about you. It's about an audience. It's about, if you want it, we will come. I sound like Kevin Costner. But if you want it, we will come.
Well, there are some Broadway performers already itching for the chance to take part, should they be given the choice. So we'll
bring it on.
We'll continue to encourage everyone to tweet and post and campaign for this show to have a future. What about individual solo projects that you guys are working on, either inspired by the Light Princess, the experience of working on that, or separate from it entirely?
Well, it's changed my life. I think working with Sam, you know, and I'm not sending smoke signals over here. It's really true that he's made me want to investigate difficult stories. Now, I can imagine in life, I might want to do something really frivolous that he would maybe want nothing to do with. And he might do something where I'm the wrong composer. And that's just how it is. But to partner with him is, it's been a fantastic journey. And I've learned a lot about writing, telling story. And so telling story is very different through this kind of medium than it is even if you're telling story in the pop world. And we were talking about that. It is different.
Yes, and you know, I think we haven't started in the music, but we're kind of circling. So hopefully one day we'll work together again. I think it would be great to work on a new piece together and to be ambitious again. And in the meantime, obviously we want to try and get the piece on in the States. That's a big dream, and that's important to us.
Sam did something just this summer that hopefully will be coming to London that you all need to look for, which is the new Michael McCurgo.
Yes, it's Michael McCurgo novel called Running Wild, so that will hopefully have a further life next year.
He was the original book writer for Horse that Sam was involved in as well, and he is, you're writing the play?
Yes, yeah, it's called Running Wild, so it's a fascinating piece about the tsunami, and it's a story about a boy who's riding an elephant and they're caught up in the tsunami, so it's a sort of jumble book for contemporary readers.
So look for that on the stage next year.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Tori. Nice plug.
Do you think there are more fairy tales in your future, Tori? I know you've been affiliated or associated with fairies for a long time.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have explored fairy tales so many times, and sometimes you can, the Cinderella movie again this year, you know, and people responded to it. There are certain fairy tales that people seem to be retelling, and I know that was on Broadway, so some seem to be able to be told and retold, and people will go to that baseball field in the Midwest, people will come and see it, and then there's some that they seem to just say, oh, enough already of that one. And so I think you have to be cautious. You have to be aware of which fairy tale you want to tell and why, and how you want to tell it.
Have you guys gone to the theater at all while you've been in New York on this trip?
We went yesterday.
We went to see Old Times at the Roundabout. It was absolutely brilliant. yeah, really, really good production of that strange, enigmatic, but very poetic and compelling play with absolutely amazing performances by all three of them, but especially Kelly Riley. I think she was really wonderful. So we went to that, and we're seeing Fun Home in a couple of days.
Yeah.
Do you find that viewing theater and being in that live audience makes you want to create more of it yourself?
It does. It shows you how they solve things. It's really great because if you can just take a step back and watch how they're solving problems, I'm sure you do that as writers, you begin to see, oh, okay, this could be a problem later on, and you see how they solved it. And so you add to your toolbox. You can learn so much by sitting there. We studied a lot of musical theater scores before we entered into this. I mean, we were really studying, and Sam would direct me to things too. I knew a lot of the early ones because my mom, when my dad would go to church, she would put on her record collection, and he had no idea what she was up to. So in a way, she was like the vicar's, I don't know, Cinderella. So he thought she was cleaning and doing Bible study and all this, and what she was really doing was showing me all these songs and records so that when he came home, he's kind of tone deaf, he wouldn't know when I'm playing what I'm supposed to learn that day, and I'm 4, that I'm doing the whole score of Poor Jed is Dead, I'm doing Oklahoma, the whole score. And so she'd have me learning all the scores. And my brother would come and have me learning the Stones and the Beatles at the same time, so that, because I had to play to my dad every night while he read the paper, because I was trying to get to the Peabody by 5, so I was developing my repertoire. But it was my mom who was pushing musical theater and Blue Eyes, Frank Sinatra, and it was my brother pushing rock and roll.
So now you see it's time for me to yank Tori's chain, because you imagine working with someone like that whose musical reference is just so enormous, and her bravery to kind of explore new musical forms and all kinds of things in The Light Princess. I think that actually story was often the most important thing, and so music does what it needs to do according to the story, and that's brave composition that not every composer can do or is willing to do. But just everything Tori's talking about kind of such kind of well of musical knowledge and experience that you can draw on.
But I'm absolutely unemployable, so it's very tricky. I mean, the thing is, the thing is, it's about not always explaining it through theory and writing it down. I would just go play it. So Sam will tell you, everything from us musically was coming from the piano. That's how it all started. And we'd work it out, we'd bang it out. We'd be together in a room with a piano, banging it out. And sometimes, we had this treasure trove, I think it was a treasure trove, or it was a big dung heap of crap. We had loads of music and songs, and then you would take these songs sometimes and say, I'm going back to the vault. And we built the vault. We have to rebuild a vault now for the next thing whenever we do that. But don't you see, that's how we had a lot of music to pull from, because we were building different ways of solving this story. We had different options, and we would write for it. We got rid of characters, people that we just got rid of. Some of my favorite songs we got rid of, but they're there. They might become other songs in other musicals.
Well, that sounds like the perfect teaser on which to end this Q&A. But thank you so much, Tori. Thank you so much, Sam. Especially thank you for this incredible work of art that is The Light Princess. I'm so happy that the original cast album is available for everyone everywhere now. And I can't wait to see what the future brings. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks very much.